mulher de minha vida. Só porque sabe amar e cumpre. Só porque tá com sua antiga.
Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
Good evening and welcome to Africa World Hour. This is Channel Africa, the African perspective, broadcasting live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Catch us live on SABC Plus app at DSTV OWK Channel 802 and OpenView Channel 628. I'm Tsepiso standing in for Tsepiso Makwetla. On this show, you can also follow us on social media for updates, highlights, and exclusive content. On X, we are at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook, it's Channel Africa 1. Instagram, Channel Africa 1. TikTok, Channel Africa 1. YouTube, Channel Africa 1. And you can also give us a call on +27 714 4459. That number again is a +27 714 4459. You can also drop us an email. It's newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Good evening.
The pulse of the continent in 60 minutes. Stay informed and inspired with Africa World Hour on Channel Africa.
The International Court of Justice will deliver a landmark opinion examining Israel's legal obligation towards UN agencies operating in the occupied Palestinian territories. Responding to a request from the General Assembly, the court will consider whether Israel's ban on the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, breaches conventions. The BBC's Anna Hooligan has the details.
The panel of international judges has been asked to clarify two questions. Firstly, whether Israel's ban on UNRWA breaches United Nations conventions guaranteeing the independence of UN agencies. And secondly, whether its restrictions on aid crossings into Gaza violate international humanitarian law, including its duties as an occupying power to protect civilians. While the ICJ's opinion will be a non-binding legal clarification, it carries significant moral and diplomatic weight.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa is in Indonesia on a state visit to strengthen bilateral relations with Jakarta. President Ramaphosa says Pretoria is looking to diversify its trade relations with Asian countries. This after the US implemented a 30% tariff increase against South Africa on goods exported to the US markets. He is on a three-nation visit, including Malaysia and Vietnam. President Ramaphosa says he also engaged President Prabowo Subianto on a variety of global matters.
We agreed on the need to increase trade between our two countries as a catalyst for inclusive economic growth. We discussed global issues as partners in the organizations such as BRICS, the G20, and the non-aligned movement, amongst others. We affirmed the need to strengthen the multilateral system so as to enhance peaceful resolution of conflict through dialogue.
US President Donald Trump has said he did not want a wasted meeting after a plan to have face-to-face talks with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin about the war in Ukraine were put on hold. Speaking in the Oval Office, Trump implied that a refusal to freeze the fighting in Ukraine along current battle lines was a sticking point. His comments come after a phone call with the US Secretary of State and Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who rejected the proposal outright.
Стало звучать из Вашингтона Now, when we hear from Washington that we must stop immediately and that we must not discuss anything further, stop and let history judge, if we simply stop, that will mean forgetting about the root causes of the conflict, which Donald Trump's administration has clearly understood and voiced.
Peru's President José Geri has declared a state of emergency in the capital Lima to combat surging crime. The announcement follows protests last week that left one person dead and more than 100 injured. Measures include restrictions on some constitutional rights, the deployment of the armed forces in patrols and searches, and shutting off access to electricity for prisoners. The declaration will last for 30 days. Geri announced the measure in a televised message.
Fellow citizens, crime has grown excessively in recent years, causing enormous pain to thousands of families and also harming the country's progress. But now it's over. Today we begin to change history in the fight against insecurity in Peru. We're moving from defensive to offensive in the fight against crime. A fight that will allow us to recover peace, tranquility and the trust of millions of Peruvians.
South Africa's Minister of Police, Tsepiso Makwetla, currently on special leave, says he did not receive a handover from his predecessor, Bheki on the political killings task team. Makwetla is appearing before Parliament's ad hoc committee, investigating allegations of criminal infiltration, corruption and political interference in the criminal justice system. He has maintained that he took the sole decision to disband the task team because SAPS resources needed to be spread evenly throughout the country, and the task team was not funded. Makwetla told ANC MP Kusela Tiko there were no handover notes involving the PKTT.
Not as I read it. What was there, though, was a reference to committees in which the minister was serving, not necessarily the National Political Killings Task Team per se in any form.
Did he maybe give any reason at any point why he did not shut down the unit himself?
Not really. We didn't delve into that matter.
The head of the World Health Organization says Gaza is experiencing health catastrophe that will last for generations to come. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus told the BBC that Gaza faces a fatal combination of hunger, disease and ruined health system that's compounded by restricted access to humanitarian aid. He says aid distribution is below what is needed to rebuild Gaza's healthcare system.
There was a promise for massive scale-up and 600 trucks per day. Now average is between 200 to 300. So that's not really what we expected. And the other problem is crossings. We need multiple crossings, all available crossings.
Broadcasting in 5 different languages, connecting the continent. This is Channel Africa, the African perspective.
This is Channel Africa. My name is Tsepiso Makwetla and you are listening to Africa World Hour. Now we are crossing to Uganda, and it's been exactly 21 long days since two young Kenyan nationals, Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyu, were abducted in Kampala by men reportedly dressed in military uniform. Since then, their families have been trapped in a cycle of anguish and uncertainty. The Uganda People's Defence Force, UPDF, submitted an affidavit to a Ugandan court in response to a legal demand requiring authorities to produce the two missing men. But instead of offering clarity, the UPDF statement has only added to the frustration. The army's denial of custody, human rights advocates say, raises more questions than answers. We are now joined on the line by Amnesty International Kenya Executive Director Irungu Houghton, and we're also joined on the line by Benta Ochieng, the sister of Nicholas Oyu, to talk to us about this. A very good evening, and I'll start greeting you. Benta, I trust you well.
Good evening.
Good evening. And Irungu, a very good evening and welcome to Channel Africa.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having us on this evening.
Now, I will start with you, Benta. It's been 3 weeks since Bob and Nicholas disappeared. Can you describe what these days have been like for your family?
It's been very, very difficult for my family, immediate family, my siblings, and even our relatives at large. My mom has been very unwell. She has been experiencing high blood hypertension, this high blood pressure. It's really not been easy. Relatives have been coming in and out of our homes, trying to find out what's going on. My siblings have been going, knocking on every door that they could, calling everybody that they can to try and get some answers. Yeah.
And when did you last hear from him? What did he say before communication went silent?
On the 29th, that's when we last talked. I had sent him a message giving him plans of me going to visit Kenya because I'm not in Kenya at the moment. And we were congratulating one of my siblings because of his birthday, and Nicholas posted on our family group that he had a book. He actually surprised us. We knew he had another book, but this book that he just released surprised us. And he said, "Hey, this is my book. It's on Amazon. It's about my life. You'll enjoy reading it. It's a good experience." And everybody was congratulating him. Everybody went to look for the book. We didn't know he was traveling. He had not shared with all of us that he was traveling. He only shared with my mom. That's the last time.
Benta, let me go to Amnesty International's Mr. Houghton. Mr. Houghton, Amnesty has called for UPDF's affidavit, deeply unconvincing. From your perspective, what could be at play here?
We, as Amnesty International, we have watched with dismay 2 denials. The first was from the Inspector General of Police several weeks back, and now we have this affidavit sworn in a court of law by the Ugandan People's Defense Forces. And we just have to push back and say that it is unacceptable that we know that Bob and Nicholas were picked by uniformed officers in broad daylight. They were in Kampala. They had entered lawfully, and they have not been seen for 21 days. So we are placing the blame squarely on the government of Uganda. It may not be necessary for us at this stage to determine which part of the government or the state is responsible, but the state is responsible. We are treating this as a enforced disappearance, and as we go into 3 weeks, we are putting pressure both on the Kenyan government to act to protect its own citizens, but also on the Ugandan government to essentially comply with its own laws and release both Bob Jage and Nicholas Oyor back to their families. As you've heard from Benta, the anguish that the family has had to go through is just unacceptable. It's just not acceptable that in this day and age that people can be abducted in broad daylight by armed individuals in uniforms and held for 21 days. So we have actually called for citizens and people across the world to sign a global petition. We are actually in the process of mobilizing 500,000 urgent alert network members who are volunteers of Amnesty globally, but also Kenyan Gen Z, Kenyan activists, the civil society, the Law Society of Kenya, Vocal Africa, Kenya Human Rights Commission, the entire human rights community are now going to be writing directly by email to the president to demand the release and safe return of both Bob and Nick.
Those are quite a lot of stakeholders, that you're bringing in together. And what has the Kenyan government, in actual fact, said? What, actions have they taken, given the fact that, this is something which is in a neighboring country? I'm sure there is some sort of pressure that they could apply.
Absolutely. I mean, the bilateral relationships between Uganda and Kenya have been very strong for many years. At the recent funeral of the Right Honourable Raila Odinga, the Minister of Foreign Affairs attended the funeral, I believe, in the place of the President, who is currently unwell. So relationships have been very strong. we had an initial assurance from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that they would take all actions and leave no stone untouched until both Bob and Nick would be returned back to Kenya, or at least that they would have access to consular services and lawyers. As we, to our shock, the two men have been held incommunicado without access to neither consular services from the High Commission in Kampala, nor to lawyers or even to medical practitioners. And of course, the family has not had access to them. So we are continuing now to focus on the Kenya government because we feel that 21 days is too long. Yes, we may have had a state funeral in the last 5 days, but I think now that that is concluded and now that the national government is focused back on matters, we are now demanding that the energies begin to pick up again in the case of these two. So we are actually calling on people, and South Africans can join us on this. They can go to our amnestykenya.org website and click and send a direct email to the President of Uganda and essentially demand for the safe return of Bob and Nick.
Irungu, this is the last question to you. What credible evidence or witness accounts do you have that suggest the involvement of Ugandan state agents or security forces in this?
We actually have a very credible eyewitness account, and there have been several informal responses from within the Ugandan government, both within the ministries but also within the law enforcement agencies, that indicate that Bob and Nick are still in Uganda and potentially, possibly, they are still being held in a military facility just outside of Kampala. So we are treating this essentially as a case of enforced disappearance, which under international law is prohibited. And of course, under Ugandan domestic law, the two men should have been brought to court. If they have committed any offense, they should have been brought to court within 48 hours. That has not happened. We are now into, again, the 21st day of their forced abduction and their solitary confinement.
No, thank you very much, Irungu, who is Amnesty International Kenya Executive Director. And I'm sure with all the efforts that you have taken to mobilize and get the international community to speak out on this and get a petition running, does really allay the family fears. Thank you very much, Irungu. And let me go back to you, Benta. You heard, Irungu's side of things and what he has said. As a family, from the strides that Irungu spoke about of mobilizing the international community, the efforts that Amnesty is taking, how do you then feel to go on to hear what has been devised?
We feel hopeful, and we're actually very grateful to Amnesty. They've been with us from day one. They've been very vocal about this. They're helping us through this very difficult ordeal. And also they are guiding us so that we can be able to see, guiding us to the right people who are able to help us through this. So we're staying hopeful, we're staying prayerful, and they're just holding our hands as much as they can.
Tell us more. What kind of person is Bob Nicholas, and what should the world know about him beyond the tragic situation?
Well, I don't know much about Bob because I just knew him as a friend to Nicholas. The world knows them as the chair and Nicholas as the Secretary General, who's very well known into the walls of the courts, seeking justice and trying to correct errors and fighting for human rights. But at home, we just know them as friends. We know Nicholas as a father, a brother, an uncle, a grandfather, and most of all a citizen. And to us, Nicholas is like our hope for our mom. He takes care of my mom. He does everything he can. He takes my mom for appointments. He's my mom's companion. to me, he's one of my best friends, because when I was still in Kenya, Nicholas, it was very hard for him to say no. We know him as much as he's the middle child, we know him as the we used to call him the moderator or mediator, or Nelson Mandela, because he always tries to fight to make sure there's justice. When there's a problem between siblings, he's the one who's going to be like, hey, let's sit down and solve this. Let's work it out. Let's not, grumble and fight about this. Let's do this together. He was that kind of a person. He is that kind of a person. That's what he's been ever since we were kids. And that's why you see he came into becoming a human rights and an activist for change and injustice. Nicholas, anytime I had an issue, if I needed to go anywhere, I would tell Nicholas, hey, I know you're having meetings. Can you take me somewhere? He'll grumble, but he's going to say, hey, what time? Even if he's having meetings, no matter where he is, he's going to make sure he has time for family. And anytime Nicholas works on a job, he's going to use his first paycheck on us, his family. That's the kind of a person he is.
And, the disappearance, how has it weighed on the family financially?
We have tried as much as we can. We have given as much as we can wherever we are able to. But like I said, Amnesty is holding our hands and have been supporting us. They are the ones who've been organizing a lot of things for us. The press conference, the place to be. They've done so much for us. So they've really helped.
No, it's good to hear this. Anyway, this is where I'm going to have to leave it, Benta. And I'm sure Channel Africa will catch with you in the next couple of days or weeks just to check on how the situation is going. And I'm sure with Amnesty mobilizing so much support, something will give very soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now that was Benta. Benta is a sister to one of the missing brothers, who is Nicholas. Nicholas and Bob were abducted in neighboring Kampala by what has been seen as men in military clothing.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. When the sun goes down, we don't stop the talk. Channel Africa, the best nighttime radio. The pulse of the continent in 60 minutes. Stay informed and inspired with Africa World Hour on Channel Africa.
The following report contains sensitive material, including descriptions of physical assault and bullying among school learners. While no graphic images are broadcast, the details may be upsetting, especially to survivors of violence or parents of school-aged children. Listener discretion is advised. Now, a video on social media has sparked outrage around South Africa. The video, which was shot at Milnerton High School, situated in the Milnerton suburb of Cape Town, Western Cape Province, has exposed what appears to be a brutal act of bullying and assault. The footage, which reportedly dates back to Thursday, the 16th of October 2025, shows a group of older learners allegedly surrounding and attacking a grade 10 learner in what is being described as an initiation ritual. In the disturbing clip, a learner is forced to stand with his hands against a wall while other pupils, some holding belts, a hosepipe, hockey sticks and wooden logs, deliver blows and taunts. The United Democratic Movement, UDM, a political party in South Africa, has strongly condemned the attack, and they now join us on the line to talk to us more about this brutal act. We speak to Ngaba Yomzikwangwa, the Chief Whip and Member of Parliament. Good evening, Ngaba Yomzikwangwa, and welcome to Channel Africa.
Good evening, Tibos. Thank you so much, and thank you for having us.
Nabayomzi, South Africans have been horrified by the footage from Milnerton High. What was your personal reaction when you first saw or heard about this incident?
I was also horrified. I mean, when the parents brought the video to my attention, it is because it had apparently been circulating for a while in the school since the incident happened. And while they raised the matter with the leadership of the school, the principal, and so on, nothing was being done about the challenge. They were told in no uncertain terms not to circulate or share the video with other people, which is in this case members of the public like myself. But when they came to me asking for help, I couldn't sit back, twiddle my thumbs, and do nothing about it. I had to share it with the rest of the people in South Africa, trying obviously in that process to protect the identity of the victim in particular, so that we could expose the challenges that some of our students experience at these high schools. And that is what came to my mind. And the second issue, obviously, is the work what that we had to do as a party in the background, trying to engage the different and the relevant stakeholders to make sure that they all did what was expected of them.
What does this say about the moral and social issues being cultivated in our schools and communities today?
Well, it reflects negatively on those moral challenges that we are experiencing in our schools, and they require leadership. I understand, yesterday I had the privilege of engaging the parents of the victims very late in the evening. We had a meeting that lasted up until 9 o'clock in the evening, where they detailed stories of what has been happening to their children for more than a year now. It's not an isolated incident. It is just that the school, at the time when they were reporting a series of bullying incidents that were happening against their children, not enough was done. They would be told that the matters would be investigated, but nothing was done. So in other words, even though you can't blame the school for bullies who are attending classes or students at those schools, but the culture of impunity sets in or takes root when the leadership of the school, including the Department of Education, do not react timelessly to complaints and try to nip them in the bud. But it's clearly a societal problem. I mean, whatever is happening there is a microcosm of what happens elsewhere in society. And yes, we want these children to be punished for what they've done. An appropriate sanction should be imposed on them. But at the same time, there must be corrective measures that are put in place to ensure that we don't throw the kitchen sink at them, rather. But that as parents, we build them into better leaders for tomorrow, and we have that responsibility. However, now we have to teach them a lesson and make sure that they do not do this thing again.
According to reports, at least one of the victims required medical treatment, while others remain traumatized. Can you give us more details about this?
Yes. I mean, the parents said to me, when I was given a report, is that the incident that people saw on video, which went viral, is one of the many incidents where these bullying and assault incidents had happened at the school. It would appear that the learner was then beaten up that day, was beaten up simply because he did not present himself the day before in order for him to be assaulted. And that was the reason. And some of those who sustained injuries were beaten in a series of beatings that took place at that particular change room. And it would also appear the reports that we're getting from parents, as well as the statements that were made by the learners to the police, that the same thing happened to them, around April when they were in George. They knew that whenever they were called to the change room of the first team, meaning the rugby team, the first team of the rugby at school, they would be beaten up. And the educators knew about this, turned a blind eye to it. Even those incidents that took place sometime in April were reported to the school. Nothing was done about it. Each and every time a video of this nature, because it is the same bullies who often take videos of themselves, right, assaulting learners, who film themselves while doing this thing. So what happened is that even in April, it would appear that the same thing happened to learners. The matter was reported to the school. Nothing was done. They said they are going to investigate and take action later on, and nothing was done. They wanted to do the same thing again with the incident, appealing to parents that the video should not be shared with anyone because they were going to deal with the matter internally, and I wasn't going to take that nonsense, obviously.
Now, how do you then assess the response from the Western Cape Education Department? And I mean, you told us about the school itself, that these some occurrences, basically, they've been occurring, and they haven't acted swiftly and appropriately enough, and that's something that you won't take. Now, the Western Cape Education Department, its reaction, how is it reacting to this? Is it reacting in a fashion in which arrives to expectation?
No, not necessarily. The only thing I would commend them for is being accessible and willing to take questions, and willing to get us to work together collaboratively on this issue. When I met with the parents yesterday, one of their concerns was that there was not enough communication from the Department of Education. In fact, the only communication that the parents received came from the school itself. And that type of communication was when the school itself would actually refer them to the Department of Education. Even when there was time when the children had to undergo counseling, the parents were not aware. It just happened haphazardly at the school. In other words, the parents themselves were excluded from that process, but not only were they excluded from that process, they didn't even know that their children were going to undergo counseling. The parents themselves had to rely on the school to tell them as to how the process was going to unfold. But look, the dilemma of the school is that now there's a criminal case opened. There's a criminal investigation also taking place. Now, they did not quite know how the internal process was going to unfold, given that there's also a police investigation, and there's a role that also needs to be played by the Department of Education. That needed to be clarified to the parents so that they knew exactly what to expect from what process and the duration of each process, so that they knew what to anticipate and what was expected of them. However, today, one of the things that the parents had to do was to give consent to the victims, their minor children, their children who had been affected by this, give them consent so that they could give statements to the police in order to help the criminal investigation and to ensure that at an appropriate time arrests are made and people are actually sanctioned appropriately for their behavior.
I would imagine beyond this that this is also somebody's job. It's actually increasingly becoming worrying. And does the current Education Act or safety policy sufficiently protect learners from violent behavior? There must be someone really ensuring that this does not happen. But these reports not only suffice from where you saw it, you experienced it, but I would imagine that it's happening countrywide. So does the safety school policy sufficiently protect learners?
Well, I think on paper it does, in practice it doesn't. For as long as the educators themselves, including the education department, turns a blind eye to such incidents, especially because it's a cumulative effect of a number of incidents that took place over a period of time. If we allow a culture of impunity to take root when there are incidents of bullying at school, and we don't nip the problem in the bud, it escalates to the level of assault that we have seen. But we have also been inundated, my office has been inundated since yesterday with messages of people asking for help. Others are as far afield as the Northern Cape. Most parents are complaining about the initiation practices that have become part and parcel of the norm and the culture of many schools where rugby is played, where first team players, it has become the norm for them to bully those who are not in the first team and to also do this kind of initiation, which is very violent. So parents from as far afield as the Northern Cape, the Eastern Cape, and many parts of the country have reached out to us. In fact, when it comes to Milnerton High School, Parents of learners were victimized and bullied in the past, where they were not helped by the school, who are no longer attending that school, have actually reached out to us saying they also want to come forward. They also want to share their experiences of what happened to them at Milnerton High School and how those bullies have been protected by the leadership of the school year in and year out while terrorizing kids at that school. So the challenge is a leadership one. You can have all the rules you like. If there's no enforcement of the code of conduct of the schools, for example, if there's no, because the duty of care legally, once you hand your child over to the Department of Education, they have the duty, they assume the duty of care, and they are supposed to protect and ensure the safety of your child, the safety and security of your child. If they fail to do so, we can take them to court to ensure that whatever loopholes are in the system which make them to have these lapses are addressed. It's one of the discussions that I had informally today with the lawyers of the UDM to say, in the meantime, while you are allowing due process to unfold, we should prepare ourselves for any eventuality. In the event that they want to give these learners a slap on the wrist, in the event that the sanction we feel is not appropriate enough, but an important question that the Department of Education needs to account for, whether this process is concluded in the next couple of weeks or not, is that how is the department expected constitutionally and legally to discharge its duty of care responsibility towards our children when we entrust them to them during school hours.
The United Democratic Movement's Nxabayomzi Kwangwa, thank you very much for making time this evening to talk to us about this worrying incident that occurred at Milnerton High.
Much obliged to you. Thank you, Dad.
That was the United Democratic Movement's Nxabayomzi Kwangwa, who is the chief whip of the party and a member of parliament.
Africa. It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K or more of our forests have been destroyed.
Tamo kutuli bwanji ndi Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
See, Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. And join the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Broadcasting in 5 different languages, connecting the continent. This is Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Amid rising global uncertainty, the growth and scale of pension fund assets are increasingly prompting governments to look for ways to channel some of this capital into national priorities. This is contained in the recently released 17th annual Mercer CFA Institute Global Pension Index. The index benchmarks 52 retirement income systems worldwide. Tutongobeni compiled this report.
The 17th annual Mercer CFA Institute Global Pension Index MCGPI benchmarks 52 retirement income systems worldwide. The index is a collaborative effort between Mercer, the CFA Institute, and the Monash Center for Financial Studies, with Alex Forbes providing critical input for the Southern African region. The MCGPI is the world's leading independent comparison of pension systems, evaluating each country across 3 core dimensions, highlighting strengths and areas for reform to improve retirement outcomes. Belinda Sullivan, head of corporate consulting at Alex Forbes, says the index covers 3 dimensions, with the Netherlands receiving A grade while South Africa scored C grade.
The Mercer CFA Global Pension Index is the world's leading independent benchmark for comparing different retirement income systems. So there are over 52 countries which participated in the 2025 review, representing around 65% of the world's population. The index really looks at the retirement system across three key dimensions. So we look at adequacy, so that has a 40% weighting in respect of are retirees receiving enough income for a dignified retirement. Sustainability, where they look at 35% of the index. Can the system deliver benefits over the long term? And then integrity, which is the balancing 25%. Is the system well governed, transparent, and trusted? Then across each of these, they give an overall grading to each country that participates, and that's based on a score out of 100. So for example, the Netherlands, Iceland, Denmark, Singapore, and Israel each received an A grade in 2025, while the South African system received a C grade.
The United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and Malaysia recently encouraged pension funds to invest in domestic infrastructure and innovation. Meanwhile, in other markets, debates continue over whether pension funds should be compelled to consider environmental, social, and governance factors rather than focusing solely on financial performance. Sullivan says although South Africa received a C grade, it's an improvement from last year's D grade due to the introduction of the two-pot retirement system.
The results for South Africa in 2025 have been pleasing in that we see an overall increase in our grading from D up to a C grade, while our sustainability and integrity levels remained relatively stable. We had a vast improvement in the adequacy scoring. Now, the improvement in adequacy is primarily due to the introduction of the two-pot retirement system in September 2024. This resulted in the split of contributions going 1/3 to a savings component, which is accessible by members for short-term needs.
Furthermore, Sullivan says the report emphasizes the significance of collaboration between government and the key players and encouragement of the older workforce participation in order to boost sustainability.
The report highlights the need for continued reform and collaboration among government, industry, and stakeholders. And there are key trends and recommendations which include expanding the coverage of occupational pension schemes to include more workers. So looking at further increasing the support for the poorest elderly in order to improve adequacy. And then encouraging older workforce participation to boost sustainability, and then strengthening governance and communication to build trust in the system.
For Channel Africa News, I am Tuto Ngobeni in Johannesburg.
The Limpopo provincial government in South Africa, in partnership with the embassies of Zimbabwe and Malawi on Monday, met with the families of the victims of the devastating N1 bus incident to begin the next phase of the identification process. The meeting took place at Siloam Hospital in Makhado, where families and relatives received support as they physically identified their loved ones who died in the accident that claimed 43 lives of both Zimbabwe and Malawian nationals near Louis Trichet last Sunday. En route from Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape province of South Africa. To get more on how the above proceeded, we are joined on the line by the Malawian High Commissioner to South Africa, Ambassador Stella Ndau. Good evening, Ambassador Ndau.
Good evening, Tsepiso.
Ambassador,
thank you very much for having me.
The pleasure is all ours, Ambassador. Could you start by telling us how the identification process went at the hospital and how the families responded to the arrangements made by the authorities?
Well, the process of identification went on very well. It started with the Honorable Premier of Limpopo meeting the families, and she met us from the diplomatic and consular staff from both Malawi High Commission and also Zimbabwe Embassy. She was accompanied by MECs from the province, MECs of health, MCs of transport, and others. And also there were mayors from nearby municipalities. There was also leadership from the Department of Health in the province. We also had hospital management from the hospitals where some of the victims are being treated. And inclusive, again, were pathologists. The police was there. We also had religious groups. Of course, the media was also there. So almost everyone was there. It was a cordial and very good meeting. Of course, sad and somber, as you can imagine. But the manner in which all this was organized, really helped the bereaved families from both our two countries. And they felt there's so much needed warmth, love, and support at this difficult time. So really, I must commend and appreciate the immense assistance that we are receiving from the government of the Republic of South Africa and through the Limpopo provincial government. Every process on the ground, actually, I can say is that is well coordinated since the accident happened on 12th October. So we are comforted by the organization, how it happened, and how the families were being taken care of. That's what I can say for now. Thank you.
With what you have said, have you gone on to perhaps see the kind of psychological or counseling support that is being provided to help them through this process?
Yes, we've been on the ground. Actually, since the day the accident happened, we've deployed teams from the consulate and from the High Commission. We've been working hand in hand with
Yes, Ambassador.
We've been working hand in hand with the psychologists, with pastors that are on the ground. They have been having one-on-one sessions with the victims, especially the survivors. Remember, there are some survivors that have lost their beloved ones on the accident, and those are receiving special care. And even the members of the bereaved families some have come all the way from Eastern Cape, they've also been receiving the psychosocial support.
Do we have a confirmation at this stage of how many of those victims are Malawian citizens? Of the 43, yes, we know that it's both Malawian nationals as well as Zimbabwean nationals. How many are those of Malawian citizenship?
The number now, for Malawians, we've lost 8. And we lost 1 woman, 6 men, and sadly there was a child. And also, you're talking of 43. Now the number is actually 44, with 1 succumbing to their injuries at the hospital on Sunday.
How long is the process of identification and repatriation of the Malawian victims expected to take? And what would be the key steps being coordinated between the two governments? Would it be something that could be very long to conduct, or it could be something that could take after identification?
There's no definite time at the moment. Suffice to say that it is a meticulous process. There are no shortcuts that are being taken on this process. So we have to follow the law, and we also have to follow laid down procedures for these processes. So firstly, there's the physical body identification that has happened. And also we've had fingerprints that have been taken so that they can be matched through the processes that involve the police back home in Malawi, and also that involve our National Registration Bureau. And in some circumstances, there might be need for DNA tests. So it's not something that can take, we can say that this is going to end today. But so far, we can say that there's very much there's much progress that has taken place, and we are hopeful that maybe probably by the end of the week, maybe the processes should have been completed.
What has been your
But
main...
the physical identification happened on Monday. Yeah.
What has been your main concern, given, since the accident took place? What has been going through your thoughts, given the facts, how the accident occurred, the passengers that were in the bus, the number of passengers in particular, and that has been a major concern. What do you think? What's going on? What's going through your mind insofar as the nature of this accident, and what could you say in terms of the future, not necessarily mitigation, because we don't know what people are thinking and what action could be taken, but what's your main concern here?
My concern really, I think, is about the safety of our buses and how the conduct. I can say that the whole process of getting passengers from different places, taking them from one place to another, the overloading that we've heard, as you've heard, that it was a 60 capacity bus, but the numbers were above 90. So you can see that I think the bus was overloaded. So I think there is need to do more in terms of maybe checking the safety, and also the buses themselves. We cannot rule out what was happening with the type of the bus, whether it was in good shape, but probably maybe it was in good shape because it started all the way from Eastern Cape coming all the way to Zimbabwe. We can also not rule out the issue of maybe human errors. You never know, because Eastern Cape is far. Maybe fatigue, maybe overspeeding. I mean, there are all these speculations. But I think maybe after everything has been, postmortems have been done, maybe we can come to the gist of it. But the concern really has been the issue of how the passengers are recruited, and also how they were powered in the buses. I think it's something that authorities need to look into to avoid such accidents.
Ambassador Ndau, thanks for your time this evening.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.
That was the Malawian High Commissioner to South Africa, Ambassador Stella Ndau.
Let the good times roll. From the 10th of October, make a note. Channel Africa is stepping into a brand new era with the launch of our upgraded website and app. It's easy, fresh, and always on your fingertips. Wherever you are in the world, Africa's voice is just a click away. The future of Channel Africa goes live from the 10th of October. Don't miss the moments. Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
South Africa is nearing a critical decision point that could determine the exit from the Financial Action Task Force FATF grey list. Analysts say the country's potential removal from the FATF grey list hinges on its ability to demonstrate the effectiveness of the implemented measures. The global anti-money laundering watchdog conducted a crucial on-site visit in June, with a final decision expected at its plenary later this week. Nosipo Khatebe has the details.
South Africa could be in for some good news this week. Monday marked the start of the FATF plenary and working group meetings in Paris. The week-long gathering is a pivotal moment for the country, as the global watchdog on money laundering and terrorist funding will decide whether South Africa can be removed from the grey list. Business unit lead for governance at More Infinity, Danny Dorfling, expressed confidence that the country could be removed.
This on-site is the gate to delisting, and obviously the decision drops on Friday. That also shows the effectiveness across 11 immediate outcomes. So assessors look at outcomes for risk-based supervision working, money laundering, terrorist financing, cases investigation and prosecution, asset confiscations, sanctions being applied, beneficial ownership data being used in real cases, international cooperation, etc. So the FATF has an effectiveness yardstick in essence.
Dorfling says the grey listing has had real consequences for the country, particularly small businesses.
I think SMEs were hit the hardest because of the beneficial ownership, onerous compliance, the onerous compliance guidelines and requirements from a beneficial ownership point of view. And we've also seen that in portfolio inflows. I mean, when Moody's flagged persistent weak FDI as sort of a 7-year low and sub 2% growth as a core constraint, the fiscal squeeze from weak growth, starving supervisors and prosecutors of capacity is exactly what the FATF wants to see in sustained discussions and in sustained investigations. So I think it would be twofold. I think obviously from a foreign direct investment, we've definitely been squeezed, but also the SME market. I think we see a lot of businesses at More Infinity that we work with that really have a big compliance burden on them because of the enhanced regulations.
He adds that it will take some time before the country sees a noticeable uptick in capital inflows after the delisting.
The IMF evidence shows that grey listing is linked to a large decline in total capital inflows, about 7.6% of GDP on average. And removing this label lifts that headwind and supports investment and M&A appetite over time. I think the amount of time in which that's going to take is going to be a longer run discussion. I would say almost a 5-year discussion. I don't see that happening overnight. And I think our competitiveness via clean data is something that we can leverage in the interim.
There have been some red flags raised that South Africa's delisting could be delayed amid new corruption allegations at the country's latest commission into its policing. Nosipho Khatebe, SABC News, Johannesburg.
This is a Channel Africa. It's the best place to be. And I'm with Shayla Dukumana.
Oh, my days. My day maid. My evening maid. Thank you, sir.
You're at the right place.
Come on, Tsepiso Makwetla on the ones and twos. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing okay.
Yeah?
Yeah?
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, not that you asked me, but I'm fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm great. And I'll tell you why. Today we are talking all things romantic times. Okay? We're in the sphere of dating, in the world of mjolo, as South Africa would put it. And the context that we're looking at today, the very first being a competitive streak within dating. So you and your partner, of course, supporting each other. But you start to notice that there's a bit of envious natures between the two of you because there's a competitive streak. Maybe you're both broadcasters. Maybe you're both in the same space. And so when one gets promoted, the other's, it's almost like a cringe fest. But I have to, celebrate my partner. I love them. But at the same time, there's a bit of a challenge. Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, you find that maybe not that she knows better than me, but she has more information. And I can actually learn from her. But because of my ego, I want to learn alone and come heavily loaded with information. Things like those.
Okay.
It's maybe you could say it speaks to a level of insecurity. I don't know.
I mean, to an extent, yes. But what if you're just naturally competitive? Because there are individuals who are just competitive. They compete with everyone. And it's like a fundamental setting in their being. And so we're going to navigate that in the first hour. Then in the second hour of the show, we're going to be looking at developing our EQ4 relationships. So a lot of us want the relationship. We desire it. Listen, I want to have my bae. I want to take my pictures. I want to be on social media. I want to be able to switch off the phone and have somebody to talk to. However, when we do step into the context, we have no idea how to carry it out. Have you found yourself in that predicament where it's you love this person, you care for them, but I don't know how to cradle you as you so desire, and I don't know how to listen to you when you do request what it is you need?
I've once found myself in that kind of a situation, but I thought I was handling the situation very well until the person ended up deciding that I'm not the perfect fit. And, one of the reasons was that I never listen.
Well, Tsepiso Makwetla, we can testify that you listened today, right?
Yes, I will.
That's the show.
Right. No, thank you very much, Sheila. That wraps up tonight's installment of Africa World Hour from myself, Tsepiso Makwetla, producer Tumelo Zulu, technical producer Didimalo Tirimakau. That's how she likes it. That's how she wants me to say her surname. And the rest of the Africa World Hour team, thank you for listening. Our digital team members, Nhlanhla Ngcobo and Elaine Pengani, thank you very much. For more comments on the show, send an email to info@channelafrica.org. Goodbye.